off by saying congratulations on the brand new album. I've had a chance to have a listen and I absolutely love it. And of course, we've been playing the single Hordes on our show and been getting great feedback from that as well. So congratulations on that as well.
Oh, fantastic, and thank you very much for playing.
So, mate,
it's been a long time coming, this album.
So, mate, tell us a little bit about that. A lot of people have been out and seen you guys gigging over the years and have fallen in love with the band. Why has it taken so long to be able to sit down and work on this album?
Well, I guess it was just extremely bad timing on our part because we pretty much had the album ready to go. We were walking into the recording studio when the pandemic hit, and we kind of got hit by a lockdown. We weren't walking into the studio. I mean, we were planning to sort of be there. I think everything kind of fell apart in around March, end of February, something like that. We played a gig around end of February. Everything was fine. A month later, everything was chaos, and we were all locked down. But the point was we'd had all that development before that time, and that was it's a couple of years ago now, right? 2020, and just taking all that time to get to that point. The demos were recorded. We'd rehearsed ourselves silly. We'd played our last kind of gig before going into the studio, and then boom, we suddenly locked down. And in between the lockdowns, we found that you could lock in a date to go into record, but you couldn't rehearse because we couldn't get together in a rehearsal studio because we were locked down. So that really is the main reason why it just took so long. So if it came out in 2020, you'd go, hey, June's was out in 2017. That's not so bad. But, you stack a couple of extra years on top of that, and it does seem like it's been a while.
How do you get through that period, like with the lockdowns? Because I know so many bands that decided it was a great time to be creative, and others went, oh man, I just can't cope with this, and kind of went into hibernation. How did you cope with that time period? Like, were you still working on tracks to try and make them even better before you went into the studio, or how did you cope with that period?
We didn't consciously work on tracks to make them better, but I mean, inevitably it happened anyway. Obviously, Regan was just, working on his solos and thinking of extra parts and all that kind of biz. And the main problem there is that we couldn't get together to rehearse. So it wasn't a matter of like, oh, well, we can't record it, we can't release it because of lockdown. No, we can't actually get together. And we're not like the sort of band that will play a jam over a Zoom recording, over a Zoom meeting to each other or anything like that. We literally didn't see each other through most of that period either. And then even we played one gig, I think, through most. I can't remember. So the dates are kind of getting pretty fuzzy there.
Yeah.
But we did play one gig where it was like lockdown ended the weekend before. We had a gig booked that was probably not going to go ahead, and but the lockdown ended, and then 2 weeks later we're back in lockdown again. So we literally played one gig, no rehearsals, and just sort of jumping out. So it wasn't like I questioned how do those bands that operate or that stacked up a couple of albums or whatever, how did they just logistically get together to do that? I guess it's possible if you have one person who's like the songwriter and they just present a bunch of stuff to the rest of the band and go, oh, here's our next album. But we're very collaborative in that regard. So it pretty much just put the brakes on, and we kind of ground to a bit of a halt, just to sort of, for a start, just to see if it's going to blow over. It's not going to be as bad as it was, but it kept going, and the day's finally here anyway.
Definitely. So prior to that, though, before the shit hit the fan, what had the songwriting process been like for you guys? Like, had it been a pretty quick process or a longish kind of process, and what kind of things were inspiring you?
Well, yeah, that's a good multi-part question. I think our songwriting process is pretty much the same. Generally, I can't speak to how the guys come up with the riffs or the ideas for the musical side of stuff, but generally I get presented, or we get presented, hey, look at this riff, at a rehearsal or something or other. Or occasionally we'll get a video sent through the group that we're on, where we chat to each other. Hey, here's the riff, whatever, and you start thinking about it, and you get together and you rehearse, and you play that riff over a few times. I start making warbly noises over the top, trying to come up with a melody, and it's a very collaborative, progressive kind of thing in terms of taking it from that riff or a couple of riffs, structuring it into, let's go halftime here, let's do this, let's put a bridge in, that kind of stuff. And I am very impatient when it comes to songwriting, so I'm pretty much, all right, it's done. We got a verse and a chorus. That's all we need, isn't it? Come on, I'll slap some lyrics on. We're done. But no, the guys like to finesse with a bit of polish, a little bit of structure, a little bit of thinking about it, and going, hey, it would be nice if we did this. And that I guess my lyric side of things and the vocal side of things are a little bit disjointed from the musical side of writing the songs.
Yeah.
Kind of coming over the top of stuff. It's pretty seldom I'll sort of jump in and say, oh, look, I think we should do this here instead, or, I need a vocal part here or something like that. Pretty much just a bit of a leaf on the wind in terms of where the guys want to take it musically, and just make sure that I can, back it up with a vocal or in a lot of sense, a big change, I think, over the last couple of albums, but June's to this one in particular, is knowing when to shut up, basically. Not try and sing over every part of the song, just sort of like give it a bit of space, let everyone listen to the riff, that kind of thing. So, look, it's been it hasn't really evolved very much, I'd say, our songwriting process, but we find it works pretty well,
Now, with the singing part that you just mentioned, were there anything kind of inspiring you lyrically when you sat down to work on this one?
Oh man, lots of different stuff in here. Just let me have a look over the track list. I just need to jog my brain as to what we got in here. I was talking the other night about not having any narrative stuff because we were talking about Jock Brown, and I realised, Monolith's a giant narrative as it is. So a couple of these songs do stretch back a little. The inspiration, I guess, for the overall was a bit kind of like just trying to get an Australian vibe in there, trying to get a kind of a, Jock Brown just mentioning that, it being a bit of a bush ballad, kind of really set the tone. We put those Misery sort of bookend pieces on there with the acoustic kind of sound. And it kind of permeates the whole album with this sort of, almost like an Australiana type vibe. Trying to, get that kind of, it's a real sort of nebulous thing to try and pin down in words, but then, that kind of atmosphere of the Australian sort of rural landscape type.
Yeah.
But, which is kind of weird because there's nothing in there lyrically other than Jock Brown that kind of hints at any of that, But I feel it. I feel it listening to it. I feel that kind of vibe. It's like a record I'd listen to, driving around in the country with the windows down on a hot day. But lyrically, what was there's a lot of anger in there. I look back at the tracks like Crank and even Hordes. There's a lot of angst. There's a lot of the world is shit type of stuff going on in there. I think that was it. That was inspiring me heavily at the time.
Yeah.
I had a family member had passed away, sort of, during these during the time these songs were being written. So I think that kind of weighed into it, maybe subliminally, that they're generally, there's a bit of negativity in there, a bit of angst and depression, and sort of just, that's probably the other kind of thread that sort of weaves through these songs. Deep in the hole is where we all stay. I'll see you there pretty soon. Yeah, that kind of thing. That's sort of there if you look for it. But other threads, other influences. I think I think other bands influenced me a lot as well. I think back then Beast Wars was pretty prominent in my mind, and that really influenced Breathe a lot, just the vocal style and that. Yeah, I don't know. I could go on about this forever, really.
Yeah.
Next question.
It was interesting that you mentioned about bringing an Australian feel to the album, because we actually had someone on our show a couple of weeks ago who was talking about the fact that they'd recently met a young musician, and they read their lyrics, and they said that a lot of the lyrics were all about like living in the hood and in New York and stuff like that. And they said to the artist, "Oh, so you grew up in New York?" And they went, "Oh no, I've never been there. I live in North Balwyn." And it was like, yeah, it was such a weird thing. And we were talking about that, like sometimes how different genres of music try, even if they're Australian, they try and mirror where that genre came from. So that's interesting. Exactly. That you brought that Australian feel to it. Is that something that's important to the band?
It's very important. I think we're all pretty much, we've all got that mindset that, well, I don't know, is it a mindset or is it a chip on the shoulder? It's like, we're as good as anyone else, man, just because we're out of sight, out of mind almost. We're in the arse end of the world, and it's really hard to kind of get that breakthrough that we do cling to that Australian kind of distinctness, Australian bands are not like other bands, unless they're, growing up in the hood.
Yeah.
So I think it's a real point of difference that we need to promote when you're out there, musically as well as just stuff. I mean, name checking like Ballarat in a song. How many songs do you hear that have got like American locations and stuff like that?
Yep.
And back when I was growing up, you hear a name, like a local name in a song, and you just cringe. You're like, "Oh, dude, that's someone cool. Why would you do that? Why would you say that?" It's not as cool as like name dropping some American location. But that very much a 180-degree change of opinion on that. I think that like unless you've been there, or even if you have to live there or have a lot of experience in that location to be name checking stuff.
Yeah.
And I think stoner, the stoner side of metal, is one that kind of, pays a lot of lip service to Caius in the desert and that kind of vibe and the whole thing. And it's like, well, we don't really have deserts here. No one's living in the desert here anyway. Well, I mean, we do have deserts. Half the country's a freaking desert, but no one in the bands anyway, I should say, is out there living in the desert and getting that dust in their hair and writing songs about it.
Yep.
So it's just false to try and promote that as like, yeah, we're a stoner band, so therefore we're going to sing about the desert and whatever. Having said that, I mean, one of our original members did come from out the back of Perth, out in the middle of nowhere. So out in the desert. So he brought a lot of that vibe with him,
Yep.
Yeah.
So Cam, you've got the show coming up on this Saturday, actually, at the Gasometer. Tell us a little bit about how excited you guys are about being able to get out there and launch the album.
Unbelievable, man. I mean, it's not just launching the album, it's just getting out there, full stop. Like I said, we haven't played a gig for quite a while. The rehearsals leading up to this have been just fantastic to blow out the cobwebs and get out there and just, shake your eardrums loose in the rehearsal room. We're super excited to get out there, to get on a stage anywhere, let alone such a great lineup as, at the Gasso this Saturday. It's real cool. And we haven't seen a lot of these bands I personally haven't seen a lot of these bands for quite a while. I mean, all these bands we've been playing with on a regular basis a few years back. So it'd be great to catch up with those guys as well as actually see them play and just have a great day. It's going to be awesome being there. Really, really looking forward to it. I think we're all super excited about this one.
Definitely. It's going to be an amazing day. And, mate, we are going to play Hordes on our show again right now. So what would you like to say to everybody out there before they take another listen to this amazing track, but also before they go out and grab a copy of the album as well?
I guess just don't be one of the ones that are, letting the masters feed their pigs from the trough of your soul.
Awesome. Well, mate, thank you so much for taking the time to chat to us today. It's been an absolute honour having you on the show, and hopefully lots of people head out on Saturday to check you guys out.